welcome to Business Talk with Becky.
Down to the gun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did Hayes Firearm Academy start?
So Hayes Firearms Academy started, well, for one, so I'm from Chicago.
Okay.
But my teenage years were spent in Mississippi. The reason why that's important is because living in Mississippi just introduced me to a completely different culture. Okay. And guns was a normal part of that culture. In Chicago, guns are more so taboo. You don't mess with them. It's an easy way to get in trouble with police. Our people just don't want to deal with guns, especially considering all the crime and trauma that comes from, people using firearms in the city. Being in Mississippi is like, kids got guns, teenagers, should I say, got guns. Everybody hunts, everybody, shoots for competition. We would go out and shoot skeet just because it's Wednesday, like, no big deal. So I've always been around firearms. And then at some point when I came back to Chicago, I joined a gun club. So we're part of a gun club. It's called the 761st Gun Club, which is the Chicago chapter of NAGA, which is the National African American Gun Association. Why they decided to elevate me to second vice president, I don't know. But they elevated second VP. With that being the case, plus over the years, I've done a lot of firearm training. I've introduced people. So I kind of took it upon myself to introduce newbies to shooting. People who had never shot before. I wanted to bring them in, teach them how to shoot, expose them to firearms. Because a lot of the reason why people didn't want to deal with firearms was because they just weren't educated on them. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty much like anything else. Once you get exposed to it in a safe manner, mm-hmm. get some education, get some experience with it, then it takes that fear away. Same thing with trucks. I talk to people all the time, like, I can never drive that truck. I got a homie right now. He started out saying that. Now he's been driving for like 3 years, So experience, education, and that was pretty much the motivation. And so when I became vice president of the gun club, that kind of put me around other instructors. And so though I had been instructing for years, I hadn't been doing it in an official capacity. I didn't have my credentials. But being around other instructors, it elevates you, and that was the motivation for me to go ahead and get my credentials. And once I got my credentials, it was just pretty much, a no-brainer at that point for me to go ahead and start my own company. I already had the entrepreneurial spirit, so it's like, well, I'm paying all this money for this, credentials, might as well start a business. So that's pretty much where that was birthed from.
Facts. Awesome. So say someone wants to get a new gun, but doesn't know what type of gun that they would buy. Mm-hmm. Would you suggest, do you have a type of gun that you would suggest that they get, or do you have any advice on them choosing their first gun?
So there's no universal gun for people. I tell people all the time, you really just got to get in there and try some guns. Mm-hmm. Gun ranges like Eagle and Point Blank, more so Eagle, they have a bigger selection of rentals. But you want to go, or you can get with an instructor, like me, that got a wide variety of firearms. But you want to go get ammo, and you just want to shoot different types of guns. If you're a newbie, you don't want to start out with anything too crazy. Don't go in there grabbing the 357, the 44 mag. Don't do that.
AR.
Yeah.
That's my favorite.
And work your way up. But yeah, so that's pretty much what I tell people. Go try them out. Now, my personal opinion is that Glock is king. And I know a lot of gun people is going to disagree with that. A lot of people, some people, Glock is like just one of those things where you either hate them or you love them. And a lot of people hate them. but I actually love Glocks. I use Glocks with my students. They're very accurate guns. They're accurate out the box. You could take a Glock straight out the box and shoot at 50 yards accurately with it. Don't have to do any adjustments. So I would tell people to start there, but definitely try a few different firearms, and you'll see that certain firearms you just shoot accurately, with better. Like my wife, like I shoot very accurate with my Glocks, and I have a competition pistol that's a 6 Sauer. I shoot great with that one. My wife hates the Glock. No, I take that back. She doesn't hate the Glock, but she doesn't shoot very accurately with it. Okay. She picks up the SIG, one of my SIGs, and she just ping, like it's like it was made for her. Okay. So it really just depends on the person.
Gotcha. So there's like really no rule.
Nah. Yeah. Nah. People will try to tell you there's a rule, but it's like, that's just your rule. Like that's what works for you.
Yeah. Exactly. And we see that, with you liking the Glock and then being able to shoot accurately with the Glock, and then your wife liking being able to shoot accurately with the SIG.
Yep.
So yeah, that makes sense. Definitely. Yep. So what are some things that separate you from the rest of the instructors in the area?
Ooh. For one, there's not a whole lot of us Black instructors. That was one of the main reasons why I wanted to get my credentials as well. When you look up, whether it's the NRA website or the USCCA website, you look up available classes in our area, the overwhelming majority of them is going to be non-Black instructors. So me being a Black instructor, I think it's important that we have Black instructors, especially in Chicago, because when you think about why people are taking classes, they're coming to get, one, credentials, but two, educated. And I've always been of the mindset, the best teacher is a teacher who can relate to the student. Yeah. So being a Black man from Chicago, very anti-gun city, a lot of anti-gun legislation, I know the mindset that we grew up with. Yeah. And so because I know that, majority of my students are going to also come from that similar background, but I know how to deal with them. I know how to talk to them. I know what to dispel. I know how to talk through the fact that this woman is getting a firearm. She didn't like firearms, but she's looking at the news and she sees all the carjackings, but she also had her child was killed, right? Because of gang violence. And so you can't just approach that woman from a cookie cutter standpoint. Like, look, this is a Glock. This is what firearms do. It's never the gun. It's always you can't do that. You're dealing with people with trauma. And so you have to, one, be understanding. So I think that one of the biggest benefits that I bring to the table is just that. I come from where they come from. I understand the mentality, and I've been told I'm a great listener. But it's not just about the money with me. It's more so about, my goal is to change the dynamics of the Black community as it pertains to the Second Amendment. Yeah. So to do that with any type of longevity, you have to change people's mentality. Because you got to remember, some people may pick up a firearm and take a class. They may never shoot again. They'll take your class and they'll shoot to qualify. They won't even buy a weapon. They'll just leave it alone. But if you can actually change their mentality and get them to look at it differently and get them to understand that though when these constitutional rights were written, they were not written with you in mind. We get that. However, now you do have access to it. Yeah. So when it says this is for Americans, you are an American. Yeah. A lot of them just don't even get that. One of the things that I do in my classes is I highlight the difference in how America views a white man with a firearm versus a Black man with a firearm. And oftentimes, and I don't know if you've seen it, but I think I said it in, I think when the Tribune had quoted me, but America views a white man with a firearm as American, patriot, protector, father, husband, brave. Like those are all of the attributes that image. We talking about just a still photo.
Yeah.
Those are the things that is conjured up in the minds of Americans when they see that. But me, a black man with dreadlocks and a beard, if I have a gun, GD, BD, Blackstone, thug, drug dealer. The cops, oftentimes want to put their hand on their weapon, because they got to be cautious. And so the issue is, not only do America have a flawed view when it comes to black people with firearms, but black people also embrace that view to a degree. And so we got
to scared of getting shot. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to get shot. They don't want to die. You know what I mean?
No doubt. And I completely understand that. Yeah. Like I can't approach it. Like I can't approach a class I teach on 95th and Dorchester sometimes. Like I can't approach a class on 95th and Dorchester with the same mentality that I'll approach a class in Bonneville, Illinois, where, majority of the students may be white. Yeah. They have a completely different outlook when it comes to dealing with the police. They have a different experience. They're going to more so be the ones that's more so going to be embracive of their rights. Yeah. Whereas the class on 95th and Dorchester, like they understand rights or not, we got to move smart, especially when you're armed. Exactly. So, being able to make that transition, understand the people, that's key. That's key, for any firearms instructor. You want, and that's even if they don't come to my class, you want an instructor that understands you and knows how to teach you. That's the key.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what do you tell someone who is dealing with that trauma of, I know I need to get a gun because the jackings, or I need to protect myself, but I'm also afraid because of the cops or my daughter or son just got killed from gang violence or just a random drive-by. How do you approach that individual? Like what's something that you would tell them?
So ironically, that individual was my wife. My wife, the year before my wife and I, no, not even a whole year. It was less than a year. Before my wife and I started dating, sadly, her little brother, he was 16 years old. He was killed by a Minneapolis cop. Same situation we've seen a lot of the time. He was unarmed, shot, no consequences for the cop. Whole deal. Being in Chicago, there's also unfortunately been other family members over the years that have, succumbed to gun violence. My wife was strongly opposed to me having firearms in the house initially. She didn't want to see them. She didn't want to be around them. She just thought that they bring death. My approach, which dealing with my wife, is how I learned to deal with the community when it comes to this. It's a slow, patient thing. So, like you said, how would I deal with that individual? First off, that individual is not going to be one of my students up front. That's going to be, I deal with those people on a conversation basis, like have a conversation with them here, touch base with them later, but at that point, what I'm basically doing is, one, I want to get them to understand that it's really not the gun. But it really was the individual, whether that individual was a police officer or a gang member or a carjacker. It was the individual. It was that person's will that had them carry out that violent act. And once you can get an individual to understand the difference between the tool and the person's agenda, then you're making some leeway. But they're still going to be hesitant because we're human, right? Yeah. And so at that point, it's talking to them like a person, talking to them like you respect them. Even though you don't agree with their stance, you want to make sure they understand that you respect their stance. If an individual feels that you respect them and you understand where they're coming from, then they're going to be more susceptible to you introducing new information. So, like I said, you want to get them to first understand the difference between the tool and the person's agenda that carry out those crimes. And what that also does is, it's like, and it's difficult to describe it, but before that happens, they have gun in red. Like they think gun and they just see red. Like, no, stop, get away. But what that does is it more so pulls the gun out of that red zone, and it may keep that individual that did the crime in that red zone, but it allows there to be a separation. Once there's a separation, you can slowly start to introduce that person to firearms. So then you start with education. Education is always key. So you let them know, okay, this is how this works. You know, this is a trigger. You can't drop the gun and it'll shoot. Yeah. You know, people think that, you know, they got to hold it a certain way. Oh, I don't want to, you know, you drop this gun, it's not going to shoot for the most part. Now, there was some firearm, you know, that
misfire, but yeah,
man. But, you know, so, but you want to teach them, you know. I like to start by teaching people the safety rules about firearms. Then we progress up to how to clean it. Believe it or not, teaching an individual how to break a firearm down and clean it just does something with making them embrace it just that much more, because it kind of gives them a task. It's like, okay, I can work on this, right?
Yeah.
And before you know it, yeah, that individual is going to be ready for an intro class. Now, you still got to be slow with them, you know, because there's a big part of the sound. It plays a really big role in that fear. Yeah, the gunshot, you know. Yeah, it'll take them back there. So what you want to do, you get them in class, you know, you introduce the sounds via videos, and, you know, you tell them, you know, this is what you can expect. A lot of times, if you build a person's expectation properly, then when they do experience it, it'll be a whole lot better. But every step that you take, you have to be patient. Yeah. Patient, give them as much information that they can take, you know, not overload them, but give them as much as they can take. And eventually you will be to the point that where you can have them in the gun range.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you run into a lot of people like that?
I have, man.
Chicago in general?
I have. I've man, yeah, especially family members, unfortunately. A lot of my people that I've, you know, taken in the range that I've had to help overcome that have been family members. Yeah, I had a lady that was in the range. She took a class, you know, she had, I guess someone else had worked on her and got her to where she was comfortable taking the class. The downside is that whoever that individual was, they didn't take the class with her. And I wasn't aware of the trauma, you know, until we actually got to the range. And it kind of shut her down. You know, she couldn't deal with it, you know.
Yeah.
But eventually she was able to, you know, we talked through it. Being in the gun range, that trauma, you know, the human body is amazing in that we can adapt to almost anything, even things that has caused us trauma. Yep. So when she was in the range, though those initial shots, you know, messed her up a little bit. The thing is, it's like 13 gun ranges. I mean, 13 gun lanes. And there's people shooting everything. Yeah. So it's like the initial was like, oh my God. But because it's just going on, you know, she kind of fell in sync with it. So I pulled her off the lane, you know, we calmed her down, talked, but she still hear the shots. You know, we put her out of the range, but you can still hear the shots, you know, even though you're outside. And got herself together. She shot and she qualified. She even qualified. So yeah, so I'll say that too. This is just a caveat. Like, if you do have listeners that have been doing that and been getting their relatives or friends familiarized with firearms, don't send them to a class by themselves. Stay with them the whole step, throughout the whole process, because you're the familiar part in that, you know. So make sure you follow through. You being there in the range will probably be the difference between that person, you know, successfully completing it and having a breakdown. So stay with them.
Yeah, and then eventually they'll break off from you anyway, and then
no doubt
lead to the instructor. So
no doubt.
Definitely. What would you tell someone who has legal issues but desires to get a firearm?
So it depends on the legal issue.
The legal aspect. You can't do you got the illegal way, but then you got the legal way.
Right. It really depends on what issue that individual is facing. If they have a felony or any type of violent misdemeanor, unfortunately, at this point, there's nothing we can do. The law just does not allow people with felonies and certain misdemeanors to own a firearm. I mean, the best you can do is get a lawyer, try to get that removed, downgraded, or removed. But again, the court systems just aren't friendly to people doing that. If you have a restraining order against you, that's an active restraining order. In Illinois, you will not be allowed to get a FOIA card. So that has been that's one that you can fix though, hopefully. But you just have to make sure you go to the courts or the police station, however you go about getting that restraining order situation taken care of. Do that before you apply for your FOIA. Because what will happen is if you apply for your FOIA card with that restraining order on your record, then they're automatically gonna deny you. And so at that point, you'd have to then go and get the restraining order taken off, if they're willing to take it off, and then apply again. And I don't know if you know, but Illinois takes a long time to issue FOIA cards and concealed carry cards. So best thing to do, get that taken care of. I do know that people after, I think it's like 10 or 20, don't quote me on the time frame, but I know that you can get things expunged and then get your Second Amendment rights back. But even with that, you pretty much have to hire a lawyer to take care of that, unless you're just really smart and you know how to do it yourself. Usually people hire a lawyer though and get that taken care of. But yeah, the felonies and the violent misdemeanors and restraining orders, to my knowledge, are the only things that will prohibit you from getting a FOIA card. And the FOIA card is your firearms card that basically allows you to be able to buy and own a firearm in Illinois. I think it's only one other state that requires a card like that. It's kind of crazy. Really? But usually most states just, if you're a citizen of that state, a resident of that state, and you have a driver's license with the address, that's usually good enough. I mean, you still have to do the background part. But you don't have to actually pay for and apply for another card in order to exercise your rights,
Interesting. And they're talking about raising prices on that now too.
Dude, they are trying to kick the FOIA card fee. Once everything is done, if they get their way, as of now, it's $11 and it lasts 10 years. If they get their way, the total price for everything is going to go up to about $150. And it's only going to last for 5 years. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, get your FOIA card now if you can.
Get it now.
Just in case. I doubt it would get passed. I mean, but still, just in case.
Yeah, I doubt it too. But the fact that they're trying to pass it is like...
That's crazy. They just don't like us in Illinois, I promise you.
They don't.
I'm moving.
Nah, bro.
I'm moving.
I'm going to. Soon as I can. Soon as I can.
This ain't it. This ain't it.
Yeah, man.
Oh, man. Now, do you know if there's a time period from the time that, say, a record gets expunged or that a crime gets removed before you can apply for a FOIA card, or can it be instant? Do you know any of that type of information?
I'm not familiar with the ins and outs of how the expungements work. I do know. I don't know how long it takes from when once they get confirmation that it's going to get expunged. I don't know how long it takes for it to actually disappear from the record, but I do know that once it's actually expunged, then that person can apply that same day.
Okay, cool. That's good information for those that need it, for sure.
No doubt.
So, do you only serve the Chicago area, or do you serve other areas as well?
No, I can teach in any state. I can only teach concealed carry for Illinois, though.
Okay.
But any of the other classes, we can get it cracking wherever.
Facts.
Any state. But concealed carry is like the one main curriculum that's state regulated.
Okay.
And each state has their own requirements for curriculum. And I hadn't taken it, I just hadn't went to the other states and, applied for certification to teach. I'm like, Chicago got enough work right now that I can just focus here. But yeah, I haven't taken it upon myself to go and, apply to all the other states.
Awesome.
For the concealed carry part anyway.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, so a couple more questions and we'll finish it up.
Gotcha.
So many think that just because you have a FOI card and concealed carry license, that if someone threatens you, you have the right to shoot them right away. Do you address this in your class?
Yes. Man. And that is probably the mindset of 90% of the students. Man, that is so false. Yeah, so we have to think. So you have to be aware of what's called the escalation of force. I'll tell you this: going to a good instructor's concealed carry class will make you so much more disciplined, because at the very least, you'll be way more aware of the laws governing you being a concealed carry person. So no. When it comes to using lethal force, the prosecutor has this thing. It's called the reasonable person test. And he's going to basically compare your actions to what the court, whether it be a judge or jury, would believe a reasonable person would do. And that's a technique that they adopted from like England from way back in the 1500s or something like that. But it's how they assess your actions versus what they deem a reasonable person's actions would have been. So, case in point, if you and I get into a physical altercation, we're pretty we look like we're about the same size. Or I might be a little bit bigger than you. Here's the thing. If you pull a firearm because I'm trying to box you, you're going to get in trouble. Mainly because you're not going to be able to articulate. And I use that term a lot in class, being able to articulate. We got this saying, it's called CYA. And I ask people like, you know what CYA means? They're like, yeah, cover your blank. No. In the gun world, we call it, can you articulate? So if you're not able to properly articulate that I would have killed you or caused you great bodily harm in a fight, and you pull a weapon, well, then you just elevated the level of force, and you had no real reason to. At that point, regardless of who wins the fight, you're probably going to be brought up on charges. More than likely, you're going to be brought up on charges. Because what the reasonable person would do is fight or flee, not pull a firearm to shoot. Now, an exception to that would be, let's say you have a pacemaker, Well, okay, at that point, it changes things because a physical altercation could lead to you dying. So, you had to shoot me at that point. Even though I'm not big as Mike Tyson, I still could cause you death, in a physical fight. So when it comes to dealing with altercations, you have to think like a lawyer. And unfortunately, you have to think like a lawyer at the drop of a hat. Before you decide to pull that firearm, you need to make sure that there is a clear and present threat. The example that we use in class is the Shark Tank analogy. And the question is, do not pull your firearm for any situation that does not match you jumping into a shark tank. Case in point. Would you jump into a shark tank to retrieve your Apple Watch if it fell in?
No, I'm going to buy another one.
You're going to leave that alone. So if an individual takes your watch, you shouldn't be pulling the firearm. Would you jump in the shark tank to save your daughter?
Heck shit.
No doubt.
I'm not thinking twice.
So at that point, somebody's, assaulting or potentially, causing great bodily harm to your daughter. It's going to be more justified, or at least it will be seen as such by the reasonable person test. Essentially, only pull your firearm when your life or the life of those that you're protecting is at great risk of being greatly harmed or that life being taken. Never pull a firearm to defend property. It even plays out when you're in your home. You even got to be smart about that. People think that, oh, he's coming through the door, I can shoot him. Depending on where you live, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
And we teach what to do, in the case of a home invasion. We teach what to do in the case of you being in your house and you see somebody breaking into your car. Don't run out there with your gun. I know you want to, but take pictures, call the cops, get a description. You do all of those things. In the case of a home invasion, the thing that we tell people is if you hear the individual or individuals coming in prior to them actually gaining access, find you a safe place in the house, barricade yourself, call the cops, have your weapon. If they come into that area, defend yourself. If they don't, let them take what they're going to take. Essentially, that's really giving your case in court a little bit more muscle. Because if you go out and hunt them down, which I know a lot of us want to, we talk about it and joke about it all the time. Like, oh, I heard a noise in the house, so I got my gun and my light and I was clearing the house. Depending on what prosecutor you have, he's going to say you were a vigilante and you went out looking to kill. True. And though it may be unfair for him to prosecute you like that, he certainly will. He or she certainly will. So you have to think about your legal defense, unfortunately. While you're dealing with a potential threat, think about the fact that this may also have me in court defending myself again.
So don't do no boys in the hood thing. Come out black.
Nah. Nah. Don't do it. Don't do it. You want to, but don't do it. Don't do it. But yeah, we have a whole day. So like in my concealed carry class, day 2 of the class is typically mostly law. Mostly law, state and local law.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think I got 2 more questions. So what are some small misconceptions that you deal with via firearms? I know you talked about you can't just shoot because you feel like it, so to speak. Those who deal with the trauma, like what are some other ones that you might deal with?
People oftentimes think that people who carry firearms are brazen and, just have like jerk mentalities or personalities. And it's my own personal experience, as well as the experience of a lot of people that I've talked to, that people with firearms are often some of the most tactfully peaceful people that you'll encounter. And I can speak for myself. I used to be a hothead, and something about when I started carrying, it just makes you seek peace that much more. And I think it's mainly because you're way more aware of what can happen if I pull this weapon. Even if you don't use it, if you just pull it, that could be a brandishing charge. So again, a lot of people think, like, I've even heard a lot of people say, I don't need to carry no gun because I won't be shooting everybody. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Not unless you have like a mental problem. In which case, if you come in my class talking like that, I might let you make that statement once. But if you're the type of person that keeps making that statement, I'm gonna probably refund your money and tell you got to go find another instructor. Because carrying a firearm is a huge responsibility. And if you're not of the mindset that you can embrace the weight of that responsibility, then I don't want you as a student, because you're probably gonna have me in court at some point. But yeah, that's probably the biggest one, though. People think that having a firearm makes them bolder and makes them, more aggressive. It doesn't. If you find an individual, and we've seen the videos, but an individual that is being a bully, so to say, because he has a gun, that's carrying the weapon didn't make that person like that. That person was like that already.
Yeah. That just enhanced it.
Yeah, exactly. It enhances it, which means that probably is the last person that should have gotten the concealed carry permit, But yeah,
facts.
It makes you a lot more humble to believe.
I could believe that, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah,
it's not like the street mentality where I got a gun, try me if you want to. It's more like,
nah, man.
I can literally go to jail for life for operating within my Second Amendment, which is my legal right but yet
Mm-hmm.
I'm still could be tried as someone
Yep.
who's in the streets, and that's not the type of life I'm trying to live. So
Exactly.
definitely get that.
Exactly.
Definitely get that. I mean, that's how it is, you know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, a couple more questions. How do you see your business in 10 years? Your
In
business
10 years, say again.
your businesses in 10 years.
In 10 years, I plan to, so from Hayes Transportation in 10 years, I plan to not be driving at all. Because as I stated, I still drive one of my trucks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be driving one of these trucks in 10 years. I would tell you right now, I own a trucking company, but I am not in love with driving trucks.
Mm-hmm.
So part of my plan right now is actually setting it up to, I'm trying to acquire a couple more trucks and get them set up with drivers to where I don't have to drive one of them.
Mm-hmm.
That should be implemented within the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So within 10 years, Hayes Transportation should definitely be functioning with me only running it from my MacBook at home. Hayes Firearms Academy, it's my desire to open up different locations. As I stated earlier, we do actually plan on moving to Texas, ironically.
Nice.
But what I'm building here in Chicago, yeah, I love Texas, man. But what I'm building here in Chicago, I plan to build it to where it's strong enough to stand on its own. Okay. That's going to require me, hiring a trusted person to run it. But that's my goal for, like I said, in the next 10 years, I plan to have at least 3 Hayes Firearms Academy locations.
Nice.
Fully functioning, educating. And after the 10-year point, this is probably going to be more closer to like the 15-year, maybe even more. I do want to get a range.
Okay.
Not quite sure if I want to pursue FFL status and actually be able to sell firearms, but I definitely want to have a range. That's one of the biggest challenges as an instructor, finding ranges to deal with. And so it's my desire to have a range at some point. More than likely, that'll be in Texas. Chicago has a lot of red tape when it comes to, Illinois does. Chicago, doesn't have a single gun range in the city at all.
I didn't think it did. Yeah. You gotta go outside into the suburbs.
Yep, got to hit the suburbs to go to the gun range in Chicago. And they actually made that a law. It literally, I think last year, was just challenged and, ruled, he's ruled unconstitutional. I think it was last year, but it was very recent. But because of that, there's still not a single gun range in Chicago. And we know how Chicago politics works. So even though that's on the books now, they're still going to have a lot of discouragement, for anyone trying to open up a gun range in the city limits of Chicago. So more than likely, it'll be in Texas. Plus, the gun range part is a lot more risk to that. And I would want that location, wherever that is, for me to be in person. Mm-hmm. So that'll probably be wherever I'm actually living.
Okay.
Which will more than likely be Texas. But yeah, that's my 10-year projections.
Nice. Goals.
Yeah, man. Goals. That's it. I'm working on it.
So what do you believe your superpower is?
My superpower, I believe, I forget what I put on there, but I believe my superpower has something to do with getting stuff done. Like when I set my mind to something, mm-hmm. I pursue it dogmatically. Mm. Like I attach a level of hustle to it, man, and I think it's because I'm very competitive. And so once it takes me a long time to accept something as a challenge. Okay. I wanted to be a firearms instructor for quite a while. Mm-hmm. Well, I entertained the idea of it for quite a while. But the minute I said I want to be it, I put everything into pursuing it. Mm. Same way I am with a truck. I find a truck, I might look at a truck for 2 months. Mm-hmm. But the minute I say I want it, I pursue it with everything. And because of that, I typically accomplish everything I actually set out to accomplish. Okay. And the reason why I say that may be my superpower is because when I talk to people that know me, they always make a big deal of it. Like, dude, you be getting stuff done. And so it kind of makes me feel like that's not the norm for everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, what the hell? I don't know. Maybe I'm a superhero. Maybe that's how I get stuff done, But I think also being able to talk to people, man, I'm a very understanding person, and I can sympathize with people of all walks.
Okay.
And I know that that's a huge thing, just being heard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a lot of us is willing to sit down and actually listen to people and understand them and offer, words or whatever it is. I think it's not a lot of us. So I don't know. Maybe that might be tied into it. I don't know. But the minute I figured out how to fly, it's a wrap, bro. Like that's
fly. Oh, that was gonna be my next question. What do you want your superpower to be? So flying.
Bro, listen, flying or teleporting.
Man, you know what can get done,
dude. I like the vacation, so I would not cutting out airplanes.
I think about that at work. I'll be like,
oh man,
it'd be nice to be able to go from here to the DR, spend a month, a year, and still come back and it feel like nothing.
Man, that's crazy.
Like I never left. I was still here. I was gone for a second, but I was going down there for like a year.
That would be amazing.
Man.
But from a trucking standpoint, you know how crazy it'd be if I could teleport, especially if I could like touch a loaded trailer and teleport the whole truck. Listen, they gonna put a hit out on me, dog. If I could do that, they ain't want to.
You gonna be richer than 50 Cent. I got money in the bank.
Like, boy, I will go teleport the whole bank.
What?
That'll be dope.
Honestly, I think about that all the time. I'm like, especially sitting at work, I'm like, I don't want to be here. I want to go on vacation, but I want to feel like I never left, so I keep on making money. But I don't want to be here.
I feel you, dog.
Man.
Feel you, man.
So, bro, where can we find you?
Man, I'm online. So, on Facebook, so I don't really have any social media for my trucking company, mainly because the nature of the business, I don't have to advertise except for when I'm looking for drivers. But for the firearms company, it's Facebook, it's Hayes Firearms Academy, at Hayes Firearms Academy. Same thing on Instagram at Hayes Firearms Academy. I got TikTok. I don't know why, but TikTok and YouTube, all Hayes Firearms Academy. Okay. You can go on my website. You can see everything that we offer, all the classes. You can register. That is www.hayesfirearmsacademy.com. I typically post all my classes on there. Okay. But there's also a feature on there to where if there is a class that you want to take, but you don't see one scheduled, you can click a link and you can basically request a date. Okay. So a lot of people do that when they want to do private sessions. Sometimes I'll do like group sessions for people at their home, or they got a banquet hall or whatever the case, but they don't want to necessarily come to a class full of strangers, but maybe, it's like 10 of them and they want to do their own thing. So they can request dates and stuff like that. But also like the private lessons, everything's on the website, including links to the social media accounts. Awesome.
Well, we appreciate you for coming on, bro.
No doubt, man. I appreciate this fight. I appreciate what you're doing, man. Like I said, I didn't realize you were doing this, but this is amazing. I think more people need to know about this show.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it.
No doubt.
I'll send you a link to the other episodes.
Please do.
Check them out and then share them if you wish.
Please do, man. That's all I do when I'm in the truck, man. I listen to podcasts and books. That's it.
Dope. Awesome, man. Sweet, man. I appreciate it.
All right, brother.
All right.
I appreciate you having me on.
For sure, man.
All right. You take care.
You too.
All right. Peace.
Business Talk with Becky.